All right, guys, this is the next project. This is the one that I talked about in a prior video that is going to be definitely a ground up. This is a 1981 Suzuki GS550. This thing is older than I am. I have gone into it a little bit before I started to, get the YouTube going, but you can see all the rust. When I got it, we're doing freehand, no tripod, so I could do a walk around. When I first got it, the rear brake was just, I could stand on it. Like I literally stood on it and the whole bike started to go. And now we got some movement. So we got the rear brake loosened up. Doesn't mean it works. There's no brake fluid in it, but at least it works. We got that awesome looking seat. The seat's actually in really good shape for anybody looking to do a restoration. So, and the tank isn't bad. There's no damage. The key for the ignition is not the key for the gas tank. So that's going to be another story. I'm probably, I don't plan on going with this tank, but I do want to try to resell as much as I can to recoup my costs. The seat will definitely sell. The backrest and the luggage bar will definitely sell. Last registered in 1985 out of Merced, California. So it's definitely been a while. There's just rust literally everywhere. Didn't come with a battery. I'm sure if it did have one in it, would be destroyed by now anyway. When I first, started to look at potentially buying it, I brought some jumper cables, or actually I brought a jump starter just to see if I could get the motor if it was loose. And it turned it over on about 50 amps, which isn't much. These bikes need about 150 to start. But I just wanted to see if the motor was loose enough. I'm not sure how many owners this has. It only has 13,905 miles. The lights work. The turn signals don't work. So that's going to be one of the things that we, get into. It does not start with, it did not start with the starter button. But when jumping the coil, it would start. So I know that it was the ignition coil. So we got that. And then there's no spark. I did a compression test. Like I said, I've kind of been into this a little bit. The prior owner had taken the carbs off. So usually that's an unfortunate thing because they don't put them back together. And sure enough, they did not put them back together. So I went ahead and put the bowls back on them. The bowls were taken off, pretty much all of them. The floats were taken off of 2 of them. And then the float jets, I think, are missing out of all of them. So unfortunately, this bike, when I bought it, I didn't do much research. I just kind of know what I was looking for about what I wanted. And, I have some original paperwork. I don't know what that is, but the original tools are actually in here too. They're all rusted. It's been weathered. It definitely has been weathered. But, anyway, when I got it, I knew there was 4 carbs, but, I guess you could say I didn't know how expensive it was going to be to rebuild 4 carbs. So, whoever this was, it was a Department of Defense in Nevada, out of Castle Air Force Base. So what I'm thinking is that's kind of what started this bike sitting. I think that's kind of started it. And when they came back, maybe they couldn't get it started, or I think they fried the coil from trying to get it started, from just constantly cranking on it. If you just keep cranking it, that coil will overheat and it'll destroy it. So anyway, this is the next project. We're going to get into it a little bit, take off some stuff, start wiping the ugly off of it. My envision is cafe racer style. Obviously need to get it up and running first. Also, the DMV in California is closed, and the last time it was registered was in 85. I have half of the pink slip from the original owner, and then a bill of sale. So that's going to be interesting. So I don't want to go into too much money on cost until I know I could get it registered. And it's definitely out of the system. I'm just not sure what it's going to cost me and how much, pain in the butt DMV is going to give me when I go to register this. So once I get registered, then we'll get those carbs rebuilt, or I might even try to rebuild them. I've done one carb, like small carbs, small engines, but I've never done 4 where they have to be meticulous. And as you can see, these things are in pretty bad shape. So they need to be completely, soaked and rebuilt, new gaskets, new everything. So I'm probably honestly going to have somebody else do that, just because I know how finicky it could be. You could clean out everything perfect, but one little passage and it doesn't work. So I think I'm going to save myself some frustration on that and focus on the rest of the bike. So anyways, let's get into it. So like I said, guys, I've been into this a little bit, but we're gonna just start. Some of this hardware is pretty rusted on, having some issues a little bit. This seat, it has just a wing nut. The other wing nut's missing, and then just kind of beat it out of place. It's in good shape. It needs, some chrome polishing or stainless steel. I'm not sure what this is, but they could be polished up. And the seat's in great shape considering it's been on the weather to some degree. But it'll make somebody a good seat. So we'll try to see if we can sell it online and save it for somebody. I don't want to throw something away if somebody can use it, because maybe somebody's going for an actual restoration, and here I am just throwing stuff away. I don't want to be that guy. So I'll save it for somebody, and somebody will come along and use that now. Get this crash bar, this luggage rack off. Thing's pretty hideous. It has some bolts in the back, which are of course missing the hardware, so it doesn't have much. We'll put these back on, these nuts. These will hold the shocks in the future, so you have to keep those. Obviously, you're gonna need new shocks. These things are pretty well rusted. Maybe get some dual shocks going. The seat, there's a key in the back, and once you put that ignition key in, it unlocks it, so you get to it. Like I said, this seat's in good shape. I'm not sure what you can see. Obviously, it needs a pretty good cleaning. There's a little push down right there, but no puncture. It's the original seat. It's got real nice embroidery. Underside, nothing special. Just kind of locks in there. There's a locking mechanism. Don't think I'm gonna need that. And the side pieces, I actually have those too. So the side pieces, they cover up the battery and then cover up the electronics. That's over there. I already have that in the box that the owner gave me with the carbs and stuff. So I'll be selling the side pieces too. They need a little bit of cleanup, but not much. They're not too bad. Perfect for a project where somebody's just gonna respray it anyway. Maybe change the color. Just 2 10 mils on the seat, and it just comes right off. And in the front, it has like these rubber grommets that kind of hook around. And there's still some fuel in here. I wonder how good it smells. So there's the hook pieces right there that just kind of curve in. It's pretty common. I hear like grit in there too, so not sure if you guys could hear that, but this tank probably won't be good just because it sounds like it's full of rust. But you never know, I guess. So we'll see if we could, like I said, I don't plan on using it for this project, but maybe we'll save it and see if somebody locally needs it. I'm not sure what other models it fits. It could fit other models for all I know. So the starter solenoid, like I said, I knew that one was bad. The prior owner probably burnt it out from trying to start it. So I was able to jump start it with a screwdriver. You just contact the 2 points. Here's actually the old one. So you have your starter solenoid. This is your ignition wire from the starter button, and it connects it. It sends a positive charge and it closes this coil. So if you put a screwdriver on it, on the 2 contacts where the battery cable and the wire going to the starter goes, it'll connect that, it'll close that loop, and then the bike will try to start. So that's how I was testing it. That's how I was testing the motor, make sure it wasn't locked up. And then that's how I was testing, to see if the coil is bad. And then obviously you could put a positive on this, and you could basically put a positive charge on this from a 12 volt, and it should close the loop. So that's one way you could test it too. So this says made in Japan, Suzuki. It's a Suzuki owned part, so I'm guessing this original one. So it's burnt out, no big deal. I got a new one from Amazon. It's a direct replacement. It was either Amazon or eBay, whatever I could, whatever was a better deal. So I went ahead and ordered one of those, got that installed. Now the push button start works. Obviously I don't have a battery yet. I'm still trying to get this thing at least running off some starting fluid, just to make sure that it runs. And then I'll start ordering the batteries, which I want to get some ion batteries, which means you need a new voltage regulator, because this voltage regulator is good for flood acid batteries. But when you're trying to go cafe, you want all this area cleaned out. Like this is the intake, so you're gonna get rid of the intake. Your cars will be right here with pods. This whole assembly will be gone, and the battery's on this side, and on this side's the electronics. So the battery is essentially going to be tucked up into this tailpiece, which this will be gone. It'll be tucked into the tailpiece. So I'm going to get 2 really thin batteries instead of 1 big one, and it's going to be ion. So what you have to do is change the voltage regulator so it doesn't overcharge it. Because if you put too much voltage on an ion battery, it'll kill it. And you never want to charge a ion battery at really cold temperatures as well. But I don't really plan on using this too much in the cold. So ion batteries are really good, but very expensive. So you definitely want to make sure that you change out that part, the voltage regulator, just to make sure that you're not going to overcharge them. So until we do that, I'm just going to probably use my car and use some jumper cables, and that'll help us get it started once we get the coils. So I tested it for spark the other day. I'm sure these are the original ignition coils, and there's no spark. So that could be what was beginning of the end of this bike, what kind of put it in storage. I think the coils went bad, and then as a result, the ignition coils went bad, and then I think the starter coil was burnt out because they were trying to start the bike and there was just no spark. So there's tons of videos on how to check for spark, so I'm not going to go into that. But there's a couple different ways you could do it. You could do it with a screwdriver. You could just do it with a spark plug and set it on the metal so it grounds it out. You can see the spark then, but this thing has no spark. So I'm going to go ahead and swap out the ignition coils. Hopefully they come right out. Like I said, a lot of these bolts are just completely stuck in there. They're not going anywhere anytime soon, and that's one of the challenging aspects. That's one of the aspects of working on things like this, is not everything goes as planned. So there's 2 separate coils because this is a inline 4. So there's 2 spark plugs on each coil. So you change out one side and then you change out the other. One of these the other day, I couldn't get busted loose, so might have to get a bolt underneath, which is probably a 10. Most of the stuff, this bike's made in Japan, but most things that aren't made in the USA are just 10 or 12s. Let's get this going the right way. Get it going the right way, and we'll bust it loose. I did put oil in this motor. I put oil in the motor, and I went ahead and put ATF down the spark plug holes to make sure the rings had some lubrication. And there's going to be some rust in that engine, in the cylinders, so I'm sure, the prior person who had this had some paper towels in the carburetor holes, but who knows how long they sat open, or if they did sit open, or it didn't look like he just stuffed it right when he wanted me to come look at it. So I don't think that's the case, but you never know. So went ahead and put some ATF down there. ATF will help loosen things up for sure, and loosen up the cylinders before we really fire it up. So like I said, the plan for this is strictly cafe, minimalist. Got to strip it all the way down. I want to really do a lot of the work myself. I don't have powder coating stuff. I'm sure there's somebody local to me. I know I talked about the carbs, and that might just be easier to send out. I saw somebody on the forums, and I think it would be better time spent to have somebody else do it. And as much as I like to try and do everything, sometimes it makes more sense to contract it out, especially if it's a good deal on the forum. You could go on I went on eBay and found somebody that rebuilds carbs, and they wanted $400 US plus parts. And then I found somebody on the forums where they're more like, how much was it? I think it was like 130 plus parts. Well, the only downside is that guy hasn't gone back to me, so at this point it's kind of irrelevant because he hasn't gone back to me. But we'll get a hold of somebody. I looked up carb kits, and the carb kits alone are about $100. So if that guy wants to rebuild it for 130 plus parts, I think that would be a very fair price, to be honest. All right, let's get this coil out. Trying to save all the hardware. I don't think I'll need it on the new ones, but I'd rather save the hardware and not need it, especially because a lot of these bolts are the same size. So let's say you're missing a bolt or a nut somewhere else on the bike, you could take it from this coil, and now you have some more hardware, so you don't have to go buying more hardware. So I feel like I dropped a bolt down in there. Let's look. I thought I heard it, but I don't see it. Maybe it cleared the motor. Yeah, I don't see it. So it must have fell down to the ground. It must have cleared it. So it's best to change these one at a time, because so you don't get them confused, because one coil does one cylinder over here, and then the other wire goes to the other cylinder over here. So essentially it looks like this. The right coil, at least on this bike, does the inside spark plugs, and then the left coil does the outside. So it's good to do one at a time, just to make sure you have everything wired in right. So I got these on eBay from Too Fast Moto. I didn't get a discount. I just created this YouTube channel. I don't think they have any interest in giving somebody a discount that just started doing YouTube. So I don't know. I didn't even try to contact them. I guess I could have, but I just needed to get the parts. I really want to try to see if we get this thing running, and then that way we could start stripping it down more and putting more time into it. Not necessarily money because of the registration, but at least we could start putting some more time into it, and then kind of go from there. So this just comes with two bullet wires, or bullet connectors or whatever. The other one came with an actual plug. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this off, and then I'm gonna connect it on so it plugs into the factory wiring, because I don't really care about the wires on this. They're just basic bullet wires, but I want to try to keep the factory wiring as much as possible. So we'll cut this off, and then we'll get some new wiring, get some good connectors, and then get it swapped over and get it plugged in. And then it looks like these connectors are this. So on these connectors, there's an orange and white, and that's a common wire. The orange and white is the same for each separate coil. The only thing that's different is the colors of the rest. So the other wire is a black and yellow, and then on the other coil, it's a solid white wire. So I need to see if these coils have the same color wire on both, which they probably do. That way I could kind of wire it the same. For these, I don't think it matters plus or minus, but you want to keep it consistent. Yeah, so, okay, so this one has a green and yellow, and this has a black and yellow. So the yellow is going to be common with the orange, and then the other color wire will be the uncommon wire. I know it sounds redundant, but so we'll put this one on first. And what I'll do is I'll try to save these bolt connectors. So I'll cut enough off so that way, let's say I'm doing something down the road on the bike in another area. These bolt connectors are very common for at least for this bike. So what we'll do is we'll save them, and then I could always use them somewhere else just in case. So got enough little length, you know, maybe an inch and a half between each one, and then what I'll do is I'll just connect them into each other. And then if I got to use it somewhere else, then I still have basically a full setup. So just that way I don't have to buy extra connectors. I could just use a butt connector and you know, melt it together essentially. So all right. Hopefully this is the answer to my spark problem. Otherwise, it could be a couple other things, maybe like 3 other things. And every time it's something different, there goes the price. You know, there goes the money I'm putting into it just to get it running. And again, I want to make sure it's running before I go doing too much. And then I also want to make sure I can register it. So there's no point in building a bike and then you can't ride it anywhere. There's no sense in that. So, especially in California with how crazy they can be, you want to make sure you can, you know, eventually ride this thing on the road. So these are watertight connectors. Sorry, I had that one in my mouth. Once you crimp them on, then you know, I could solder it. I'm not good at soldering, I'll be honest with you. So that's why I'm not soldering. So that's why I'm choosing to do it this way. For me, it's easier. All these other connectors are either pinned or bullet connectors. Like I said, originally this was a bullet connector anyway. So it's not like it's gonna hurt anything having butt connectors as long as they're good. And these are marine grade. You heat them up and then they get a watertight seal. They basically, you know, kind of melt into the wiring. And then that gives you a really good watertight seal. So yeah, so that's kind of the point there. You know, I don't mind using these. Some people might say, oh, you should just solder your connections. Well, I mean, that's fine, but this is just as simple for me. And you know, do what you want to do. Don't do it because somebody else said so. I mean, hell, I could have easily just bypassed this whole connector and just basically jerry-rigged it all and just kind of went at it. But at least I'm doing some sort of connector. Some people could just use wire twist ties for all I know, and just use electrical tape. You know, I've seen it all, doing work on cars and car stereos. I've seen all kinds of funny stuff. So, you know, as much as you would probably be surprised, I wouldn't be surprised. So we're gonna use these. I got a good crimper from the local cheap tool store. I won't say who because they're not giving me any special deals. I mean, they're a great price point, especially if you're not doing this as a full-time job. Once you start using things in a commercial standpoint, then you're probably going to have some issues, whether it's who knows what. But you know, this is just a basic crimper, cutter and crimper. You could easily use this, but I find that this, after a while, the cutter and the crimper starts to wear out, and then it doesn't work that well, and then you don't get a good crimp. So this I just use for quick wire cutting. That way I keep all my strands, and it makes it easy, and then I don't have to, you know, replace it. But these tools have lifetime warranties. You know, some people dog some stores. Some people are more, you know, Craftsman, or, well, Sears is closed now anyway, but some people are more, you know, specific to a brand. But use what you want to use. You know, I use Ryobi. But once again, not affiliate. I use Ryobi from Home Depot for a lot of my stuff, and that started probably 10 years ago. I bought a drill. Well, my first drill was Black & Decker. That was a big mistake. And then my second drill was Ryobi. Ryobi just started being sold at Home Depot. And they were the first ones where, you know, you could buy one battery and it would run literally any one of their tools. So that's one of the things I liked about them, and that's why I went with Ryobi. And now a lot of other people in the game are doing it too, which is fine. I mean, hey, everybody's got to eat. And but that's just who I've stuck with, because, I mean, I already have their battery. I already have the charger. I have the impact drill now. I have a couple other items of theirs, and that's, you know, I like using them because of that. So what I like about this coil is it has, instead of just a Phillips head on top, it's actually a 10 mil, you know, hex, and then the Phillips head in the center. So on these old ones that I was taking out, I kind of had a little bit of trouble getting them out because of that. So so we got that connected. We'll get some tape on it to clean it up a little bit. It's, you know, this is hidden away under the tank, so I don't foresee it getting too much water, but I'd rather, you know, be overly cautious and make everything look clean too. The plan with this bike is, you know, maybe enjoy it a little bit. It's my third bike I've owned, and I haven't ridden in a while. My last one, I was in a real bad accident, so any friends or family seeing this, you know, I plan on, you know, just not joy riding, but riding for enjoyment around town is, I guess, the correct term. Not joy riding, that has a bad connotation. So yeah, so that's kind of what the plan is there. And I'm glad I kept some of this hardware, because it looks like I'm gonna need some of the hardware to install these. Yeah, so, which is perfect because I kept it. So that's why you keep all your hardware too. You never know what hardware you're gonna need to keep and reuse. So, you know, all these, you know, connections are basically 10 mils. So you can save it. You know, yeah, maybe the nuts aren't in the best shape, but they'll work. You know, I mean, they're just holding this coil on, nothing special really. Down the road, if I want to, I could always just replace them too, but for right now it'll work just to get them mounted and get the spark plugs in. I don't have new spark plugs yet. I probably should have ordered those, to be honest, but I did not. So the old ones will, you know, before we put them in the cylinder, we'll test for spark on the old ones and see if we got spark before we go hooking everything up. And then we'll get some, you know, starting fluid in it. I could put some gas in it, but starting fluid's easy. You just spray it and try it. So it's kind of nice to use that, to be honest. All right, what am I missing here? All right. All right, so I got one coil on. Get it on there real good. Once I get it registered and I could actually title it, I know it runs, then I'm gonna strip it down to the frame. And as much as I would like to powder coat the frame, I might just paint it. Powder coating a frame is, you know, depending on where you live, it's probably gonna be at least a couple $100, probably like $300. But I do have to cut all the tabs, a lot of tabs I'm gonna have to cut off, and I'm gonna have to weld the tailpiece section piece on, you know, the U shape or whatever. We're gonna have to cut this off, get rid of that, weld that on, create a seat pan. So there's definitely a lot of moving parts, so it might be easier to hold off on all that until you're ready. So I'll probably wind up building it and then taking everything apart and then doing it from there. So now I've never installed these type ends on a motorcycle. This is my, you know, like I said, my third bike. My first one was carbureted, I believe, but it was a newer bike, so I didn't have any issues. And then my last one was fuel injected, and that was a Yamaha R3. So it looks like you just twist it in there like a screwdriver. So there's like a screw head in there. So it looks pretty easy to do. So I think I'm gonna go with that. Just kind of decide which one I want to go where to get it routed. These cables are pretty long. I'll probably wind up eventually cutting them down, but for right now, I think I'm just gonna put them on there like that. Once again, we're just trying to see if we have spark after this, because we didn't have any before. And then after that, then we could trim them up and go from there. So these seem pretty easy to install. It's kind of cool, I mean, to be honest. You just tighten it up. I got some neighbors with some motorcycles across the street. I'm not sure if you guys can hear that. Looks like a Suzuki also, but a newer one, like a GSXR of some sort. Alright. So that one's on. Yeah, my first bike was a Gixxer 600, and it was a good bike. I had a chain and, you know, front and rear chain and sprocket on it. I mean, it was quick. It would get down for sure. It was real fast, especially after doing those mods to it. And I laid it down on the on-ramp on the freeway, going about 80, like I said, on the on-ramp. Not the wisest idea. What happened was my wallet flew out of my pocket. I definitely didn't have that much into it to make it worth it going back and wrecking, but so I turn around the freeway, I get off the next exit, get on the next exit, and I'm going too fast essentially, and there was some brush overgrowth from that, like the edge of the on-ramp, and I just hit that and wiped it out, laid it down. And I walked away from that one. You know, I was really lucky. I wound up pushing that bike home because my in-laws didn't live too far away. So it worked out because, you know, I parked at their house, and then I got the parts to fix it up. I needed a new side, you know, a new, I forgot what it's called, but new side. It was on the left side that got wrecked up pretty bad. So I needed, you know, just to get it running, I needed a new gear, you know, shift lever, new handlebar in. Cosmetically it needed a lot too, but I wound up fixing it up and selling it to a buddy of mine. And he had it for quite a while. I'm not sure how long he kept it. He might even still have it, to be honest. When I sold it to him, I think it had everything replaced. It had a brand new side fairing, and then a brand new front piece, and then I think I wound up buying him the tail piece. And then he just took over payments, so I didn't really lose on it, thank God, because I mean, I did buy it used, but still, on bikes like that, you know, you could wind up paying quite a bit for it. So luckily, I was able to A, walk away, and B, you know, not lose too much money on the bike. I didn't even turn it into insurance, to be honest. I didn't feel it was necessary, and you know, my insurance premiums were already pretty high because of other things, other mistakes that I had made, and speeding tickets and whatnot. So I felt it was, you know, I felt I would just fix it up, and I was able to fix it up, get it back on the road, sell it, and not lose out too bad. So let me grab some stuff here, and then we'll go to the other side where the other coil is. Just kind of easier to grab what I need than take everything over. And right now, these little waterproof connectors, I'm gonna need to order some more. But I have enough for this, so we'll do this, and then we'll see if we could get a running, or at least get some spark on it. All right, so we're back now. Getting kind of low on battery power. And of course, I don't have a long enough cable to charge it and record at the same time. So hopefully we're able to get this done in time before we lose power. Again, it's just a 10 mil on the bottom, Phillips head on top. The new ones are Phillips head on the top still, and then it has a outer hex, so that's kind of nice. Only 2 bolts take it off, super easy. There's one, which I'll need that. And then if this doesn't solve my ignition problem, then it's gonna be the CDI, the ignition control box. I want to say this bike does not have points. It is an electronic ignition, which at the time was pretty new for itself. It was you know, like I said, this bike was in the 80s, and for it to have electronic ignition was kind of odd. So it is electronic ignition, so it'll be somewhat interesting if I do have to start doing stuff, but it's still carb rated. It still makes it, you know, pain. All right, let's get this out of there. So this left side, like I said, is for the outer spark plugs. We'll just pull this out because I already know what it's for. I haven't looked to see if there's any part numbers on this to see if it's original, but by the looks of it, and for how long this bike is sitting, I could take a pretty good guess it's original. Made in Japan. So either, I mean, the bike is made in Japan, so that doesn't guarantee anything. I mean, maybe somebody replaced it with parts made in Japan, who knows? But it's a pretty good guess that it's original. This bike has been sitting so long that, you know, it's a pretty good guess that everything's original on it. And so far, I mean, like I said, there's no battery, so that's the only thing that probably wouldn't be original, but there's no battery, so literally everything on this is original so far that I've found. I'm gonna try to, you know, get this thing going with as little money as possible, and then we'll start the modifications and stuff like that. So I just completed a couple side projects. I did side skirts and a front lip, and then with canards or whatever it's called, the little support brackets, the support mounts. And I did front and rear brake pad swap for some performance brake pads. And then that was on one car. That was on a Scion FRS. So that wasn't too bad. It's a newer car. We did, you know, the person that I was doing the car for, he was gonna put the lug nuts back on, and I talked about it in my last video, but he cross-threaded them. So make sure you start your lug nuts by hand, so that way you don't cross-thread, because that added on a couple hours worth of work, which is fine. I mean, he's a good guy, you know, he's learning, so I don't mind that. You know, it's an honest mistake, and I've never done it, but I've done plenty of other dumb things, so I'm not going to judge. But we had to wind up beating out every single stud and get new lug nuts and stuff like that. So, and then the next job was a rear spoiler, carbon fiber rear spoiler, and some other carbon fiber goodies that I put on a newer M6. That was for somebody else that knows me. And then my last video that I just recorded, actually, that I need to edit and still load was the Toyota Sienna van. And that was somebody that my wife met on Facebook. He was kind of reaching out, asking, to see if he could find somebody that could do the work for him. And she tagged me in it, and then contacted him. And my next day off, he shows up. So I basically paid with his bike with 3 different jobs. The person selling it, he had done nothing to it. I don't even think he's the one who took the carbs off. He had other bikes, and I think he just lost interest or didn't have as much interest as he was hoping, maybe, or I don't know. I mean, he didn't really go into it, and I got a pretty good deal because the shape it's in. Even if this was running with all the rust, everything needs to be reconditioned. The front brake lever, the plunger that compresses the brake fluid and pushes it to the piston, that plunger's bad. And it's not that expensive a part to rebuild, but I'm gonna get a new clutch lever. I mean, a new brake lever, new brake cables, new turn signal lever, new grips, new handlebars. These handlebars are the L. This is the GS550L, and L means, I guess, limited or whatever for that year. And it's a huge rise on it. It's like a cruiser, and that's nowhere near the position that it's supposed to be of a cafe racer. So, so I mean, we're gonna get it taken care of. The yellow wire was a comment. Sorry, I'm kind of getting confused here on which wire was which. I just want to make sure I get these wired in right. Don't want to short circuit anything, definitely. That just makes more work. So, so a lot of the stuff that is old and in bad shape, I'm gonna get rid of anyway. So, I mean, it doesn't really bother me that it's all rusted, and I was able to get it for a little bit better of a price because of the rust, and it didn't run. I was able to get it to turn over in front of him, which I didn't think he expected a buyer to do that, but I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to have to get into the motor too and do a motor rebuild. I didn't want to sign up for that. This is my first motorcycle rebuild, so I wanted to do something that was at least with a good motor, a good head, so that way I didn't have to rebuild that. So. All right, so try to get a close-up of this. So, like I said, these are waterproof connectors. You crimp it on, then you weld it. All right, then you heat it up. You can use a lighter, a heat gun, a torch. The torch will probably be overkill, to be honest, but you heat it up, and then it creates a good watertight seal. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tape it still too, just to make sure that it looks presentable. They have these connections on Amazon. They have another kind that I wanted to try, but I haven't gotten them. And what it is, there's a little bit of solder in the center. So what you do is you hook it up, you put your wires in it, and then when you heat it up with a heat gun, it actually melts the solder. It melts at a lower temp. And then, so it solders it for you, and then it creates a watertight seal also with the shrinking tape, or the shrinking covering, whatever it is. I haven't ordered those yet. I will probably wind up trying those. I've been doing this with the crimps for a long time. I just now started using a better crimper because I used to use the one that I was showing you guys earlier, that one of these, and it wears out just from crimping it, using it as a wire cutter. And what happens is it goes out of alignment, so it slips. So I just got that one, and I haven't used it once for that kind of crimp. I've only used it for, wire splicing essentially. So, I think that's probably what I'm gonna keep it for, is just for that, not anything else. So let's get this one on. Let's see if we got some spark in our lives, I guess you could say. That would be really nice. The carbs are off. Like I said, the prior person, I don't think it was the prior person that I bought it from. I think it was from somebody earlier on, but he had taken them off and taking them apart, so that's always fun. You know, I've never rebuilt carbs, but I know that if I have to, I've done it on small engine repair, you know, lawnmowers, wood chippers, stuff like that. But I know if I have to, I would rather be not taken apart, because then I could take it apart myself, see what it's supposed to look like, see how it's supposed to go together, and then kind of go from there. But, you know, it's a lot harder when somebody else takes things apart and then they don't put it back together right, or in this case, it was just in a grocery, you know, clear grocery bag and just thrown in there. All the parts were, you know, nothing was labeled. It was just, everything was just thrown in there. So, you know, since I've done some carbs and worked on carbs before to some degree, I was able to kind of put them back together, but I know for a fact I'm missing several parts. So, but for the, you know, I mean, all things considering, this bike is, you know, not really been abused. You know, it's, I mean, it's been abused in the fact that it's been sitting, but a lot of other times bikes are sitting and, or people start hacking them up. I mean, this wiring seems all original. You know, the fuel tank, everything's all original. So with the exception of exception of the carbs, with the exception of the carbs, nobody's been in this. Nobody's been messing around with it and messing it up, you know, so, which is a good thing. Like I said, it makes it easier to take it apart myself, and when I take something apart, I can remember how to put it back together. I mean, I'll wind up labeling stuff still, but it's a lot easier to remember when you take it apart yourself. It's harder to do when, you know, yeah, if you have a diagram or manual or pictures, but on this exact bike, there's not much out there on the internet. There's not much out there on in the manual. I heard the manual's kind of ridiculous, to be honest. So, you know, if I had to just rely on that, then I might be in trouble if this thing was taken apart. But I could take it apart and remember it for the most part, and I'll be in a better spot that way. So, all right. Now let's get the digital multimeter. Get it out from where I had it buried, apparently. Let's put it on ohms, and then let's test these coils and see what we get. Make sure we have good connections. So they are reading. I can't remember what they're supposed to read for a good connection, but they're reading. And then I'll do the other ones because I didn't. So the outer coils are good. Yeah, the outer coils have good continuity, I think it's called. It's a continuous circuit between the two. That's what you want. So the outer ones are good. They feel like they're locking in there pretty well. Like I said, these cables do need to be shortened, but I'm going to shorten them later. Right now, I'm not too worried about it. I think I'm going to look it up too, because I can't remember how they need to be shortened, if they need to be the same length or what. So I'll have to look at that, and you know, I don't want to mess up my brand new parts. I just got these in the other day, and you know, I'd rather make sure before I go hacking something up and ruin it. All right, so yeah, they're both reading the same number, so I think we have a good connection. Here's my neighbor back with his motorcycle again, so might get a little bit loud. They might rev it up. That's fine. No, you just turn it off, so we're all right. And it doesn't bother me, but just for audio, just to let you guys know what that noise was. That's all. All right, so we got the coils plugged back in. I need to plug this one back in over here. Maybe going through the frame the correct way. Not too important. So now we're at a good spot. So the next part is to test if they're spark.